I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and so thrilled to be joined by Riley Keough today to talk all about the movie Zola. And I wanted to actually talk a little bit about when you first read the script and a lot of the stage directions that your character had, because you've mentioned
Mm.
how there was such richness, not just in terms of the dialogue and the specificity of that, but in the amount of details that were in the stage directions within the script as well. And so I was very curious how that really helped you with forming your character and particularly a lot of the physical elements that you ended up developing within her along the way as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, I can't remember all of the stage direction in this moment, but I do remember it was very specific and really gives you the idea of, or for me, anyways, really gave me the idea of who Stephanie was and moments that were uncomfortable. And, from the monologue that's kind of in the car, where she's talking about um, pole dancing and Zola's in the back seat and it's kind of crazy. I believe that the script opened with that originally, with that scene. And so kind of from the jump, you're going, wow, this is outrageous. And this person, and you very much in the stage direction, it's very clear how offensive this moment is to Zola. And so that was sort of set the tone for the rest of the script. And yeah, details of what they're wearing, and I can't remember the specific details, but it was very I mean, it's an incredible script. I wish everyone could read it.
It is, and I love the fact that it tells the story in a traditional sense, but it also does give us those really great visual moments where we step outside of the story and it's just you and Taylor Page, and it's just really simple things like putting on lipstick or standing and looking towards each other, and the way that that enhances other scenes. And was interested in how you and Taylor approached filming a lot of those scenes, because it feels like it's very much about enhancing the tone and the mood of the film in those moments.
Yeah, I mean, I think just keeping track of where we were in the story, in what moment. We have a very short-lived kind of romance in the beginning, and then it kind of starts to go downhill. So just gradually building that tension and awkwardness. And I mean, it's just so well written. It was, there wasn't, of course, I have my interpretation of Stephanie, but there wasn't, I didn't go into it with all of these questions, because they were already answered. You know, so
And you were describing kind of almost the romanticism between the two of them as women and as friends at the beginning before things start to take a turn. And that's actually one of the things I loved, because it captures something that's very, feels unique to female friendships, and that kind of immediate closeness you can form with someone before you even know too much about them. And for them, it's about forming that closeness and then kind of stripping it away as they both step back from the situation a little bit more. And so, how did you want to set about capturing that very unique connection that the two of them have together at the beginning?
well, the way Janixa described it is that they sort of have this moment of falling in love. So being able to play that, um, you know, moment the right way was when she sort of framed it that way. It became very clear to me what that needed to be, and almost like a seduction type situation of, wow, I see you, you see me, we're similar, we like, that all of those things, kind of sparks flying in the same moment, and how exciting we're going to go on this crazy adventure together. Yeah.
And you were mentioning before some of the uncomfortable beats that the film allows itself to really lean into, and there's moments where you and Taylor really kind of hold the silence or hold the beat of a moment to create that dynamic. Was that something that again just very much came from the way it was written on the page, or was some of that about playing around with those moments and scenes and really feeling out what the rhythm was between your characters?
I think that's something we probably found on the day, the rhythm, and finding beats that are uncomfortable is always something the moments between the moments is something I love being able to allow, um, if the director will, accept it, which Janixa definitely is. Janix is definitely interested in making things uncomfortable. So I think that she was always encouraging that.
And were you thinking specifically about the comedy within the film, or was that a byproduct of just everything that you were kind of playing around with those uncomfortable moments? Because there's so many great comedic delivery moments, and I was just very curious about like the intent or how you approach the comedic voice of the film.
I, Definitely it's in the script. The script is funny. It's dark and it's funny. Janixa has an incredible sense of humor. I Janixa and I definitely think similar things are funny, outrageous things and uncomfortable things. And I think having the same sensibility in those areas definitely helps you feel free to engage in them. It just kind of happens, you know. I mean, it's funny, and the environment's funny, and we were all, you know, dying laughing the whole time. So the more that was encouraged to find those beats.
And you and Janixa made a very clear choice with Stephanie as a character early on about, you know, we are going to push her to the limit of how terrible and how awful we can make her and really lean into that side of things. What was kind of the line of how far you were initially thinking about taking her in that regard before you and Janixa realized that you really just wanted to push the boundaries in every way throughout the film?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely in the script. She was definitely outrageous in the script, and the dialogue was the same. I didn't, you know, change the dialogue, which was inherently just offensive, the words she uses. And the first time I sat down with her, a lot of our conversation was about how far to push it and how crazy to go with her. And we both wanted to not sort of, you know, half-ass it, so to speak. And if this is going to be this crazy, offensive character, definitely we were going to go for it. I would definitely not have ever felt comfortable doing a performance like that had anybody else in the world been directing. She's a genius, and it's for a reason. It's not gratuitous. It's not to be shocking. It's very thoughtful, and I just think she's so brilliant. So I just honestly, at the end of the day, just wanted to serve her vision.
Yeah. And there's so many details that speak volumes within the film. Like I know Taylor even talks about, you know, you both having different manicures and that being very intentional. And even the fact that Stephanie's carrying like this teeny tiny purse is a reflection of the baggage that she carries in the world
Yeah.
versus Zola having this huge bag. And what were
Mhm.
some of the details like that for you with that Janixa found for Stephanie as a character that actually really helped you in finding her as well?
Well, it was more, those were more fun details to know. The nails, a great one. Stephanie's were pointy and hurt. It would hurt if I touched people. And Zola's were round and sort of gentle. And you know, at the end, I wear a snake suit, and you know that was sort of saying that she's a snake. You know, so all these little things were, you know, just they're just fun on top of an already amazing um, story we had.
And I wanted to talk about you working with Aris Mendoza, who was your dialect coach on this as well, and how you really worked to collaborate together and find what that voice was going to be. And, you know, because I know that you were also working very closely with Janixa, sending her recordings of things so that she could kind of feel out if you were finding the right space for Stephanie as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I would send her voice. I don't know who found Eris. I believe Janixa found Eris, and I would go over to Eris's house and just go through the monologues. And Eris really came up with the exact dialogue that Stephanie uses, and I would send it to Janixa in the beginning. I was kind of testing it out, and I would send her the recordings, and Janixa always was going, you know, more, go harder, you know, go really go and, you know, do it. So it just became back and forth of voice notes until Janixa was happy with it.
And you have the voice, obviously, but then you also have the physicality of her as a character, you know, and even the way that she walks or the way that you were holding the tiny, tiny purse that we were mentioning before, are all such specific details that you carry through into your embodiment. And what's your process of really finding the physicality of a character in that way?
Yeah, well, for me, you kind of have an idea in your mind of what this person is when you're reading it and you're practicing it. And it's not until you're there on the first day that the embodiment kind of happens for me. I know people definitely work on that stuff prior, but for me, I don't really um, know until I'm there and it's happening and the other guy characters are there and the set and the thing. So I think that it just sort of happens, you know, you kind of go, oh, this feels right. And yeah, I think that also she's a real, there are women like this, and she's not a caricature, and she's not a, this isn't a movie character. This is very much uh, the amount of people who've come up to me saying, I know this girl. I went to school with her. Whatever. And I think that I've, lived a pretty colorful life and definitely met people like Stephanie. And so that for me is always the most helpful when I've had real experience with people similar to the characters I'm playing, that I can kind of just incorporate the essence, if nothing else.
Yeah, and kind of in line with that as well, the embodiment that you bring to her as a character, we're seeing this one segment of her life in this one snapshot in this one moment. And I was interested in how in depth you went, or how you really shaped out all the other aspects of who she was when we're not meeting her in the story, to bring that forth into the way that you have captured her in that way that you were saying, where it's a very real person on screen.
Sure. Well, that generally for me is just conversations with the director, with Janixa, going through scenes. And, when you start spending time with a character, it just becomes second nature, and you kind of know how she would react in situations, and how she would behave. And in terms of backstory, we didn't do a lot of that work. I actually came on it fairly late. But I knew I had the script, and I talked to Janix, and I had a rough idea of, who this person is, and her, she's a child, and she's in this sort of toxic relationship, and she's very manipulative, and she's a performer. And, all of these things kind of helped build the character, and help the world and everything.
And did you and Janixa talk at all about the way in which the story is being told? Because we see the character of Stephanie purely through the way that Zola is explaining the story, and it's fully through her character's perspective that we're meeting Stephanie. And so did that inform any aspect of the way that you all wanted to tell the story and portray this character?
That was kind of what my character was based off of Zola's experience of this woman, and not so much the real woman. So yes, that was kind of what I was thinking about, is how is Zola feeling? How is she experiencing Stephanie? And so that sort of that was really my goal, is to do that appropriately, and to play the version of Stephanie that's in the Twitter thread, in the script, that's through Zola's eyes.
Yeah. And you were talking just before about, this is a character who is very manipulative. She's also in a situation where she's in a very toxic relationship and experiencing manipulation herself. And I was interested in how you thought about her relationship with self-agency, because there's moments in the film where it feels like she has a good amount of agency, and then there's moments where it's clear that she has absolutely none as well. And it's a very fluid matter for her as a character.
I think that that's the complexity of life. I think that there's some days where Stephanie maybe feels empowered, and some days where she doesn't. Obviously she's got the situation with X, and Coleman's character is really awful. But there are moments where you're going, are you liking this? And all of those nuances were something that I found incredibly interesting about her as a character. And that it's not sort of clear what she wants to be doing and doesn't want to be doing throughout the film, and what's manipulative and what's honest. And the moment where she kind of says to Zola, don't leave, and I do this all for my baby, and I'm stuck here, and then a few minutes later you kind of see her snap back into her thing. That was something that Janix and I kind of talked about as, should this be played authentically? Should it feel clear to the audience that it's manipulative or not? And I think we landed in this place of, it is authentic in that moment, but you're kind of still going, wait, is this another sort of manipulative move from Stephanie? Does she mean that? Is she really doing this for her child? And I mean, that's just human beings. Like you can't really read people, you know, very clearly a lot of the time. So I think those moments are always really fun to kind of figure out.
Yeah, and from everything that you're saying and describing and working with Janixa, and watching a lot of her other films, she always has such a clear vision and a really distinct voice in the way that she tells stories. And it feels like a lot of the projects that you do, those are the types of filmmakers that you really gravitate towards. And you've even said yourself that, you're very picky about filmmakers that you want to work with. And so when you're considering taking on a project and looking at a script and looking at a character, what are the details that are really important to you that determine you saying yes to something outside of just script and character?
It's hard because at the end of the day, you could have the most amazing director in the world and you don't click. And I think like you kind of don't really know how it's going to go down until you're there and you're working together. And so it's kind of a gamble sometimes. And Janixa is she's so incredibly talented. But when somebody sees you and as an artist, and you see them, the collaboration is so much more free, and I think the product will always end up being the best in that circumstance. But it's hard to know. Everybody works differently, even actor to actor. You have some actors that you have a similar way of approaching things, and that doesn't make them a less of an actor or actress, but it's about like fitting the pieces together. And with Zola, it was a crazy situation where we all were very similar in our approach and really got along well and really worked well together and had the same kind of we're similar actors and also have similar sensibilities, similar sense of humors. So it was kind of this crazy circumstance that was really amazing. And Janixa is she's incredible. She needs, I wish she could, would get an Oscar. I think she's just the most amazing. She's a genius. And it's just, it really feels like it's an honor to work with her. I don't remember your question because I just started ranting about Janixa.
No, but you answered it perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah, no, she's such a brilliant filmmaker. And I also want to talk a little bit about your relationship to acting overall, because I know that this is something that when you were a kid, you were very drawn to acting and would be making a lot of films, writing and directing films, kind of pulling your friends into those projects. And, it's such a great space of just freedom and play, when you're at that age and you're doing it.
Sorry, I just want to say one more thing. The thing that's so incredible about Janixa is she's incredibly everything. She's so incredibly detailed and thoughtful and knows exactly what every frame and everything's going to be. But within that, she allows for her performers to be really free, which is a combination that is, it's really the way to do it. I don't know how it happens, but that's the way. If anyone's listening, it's just and allows you to kind of mess up and figure it out on your own and go, okay, this is what I need to do, and trust yourself. And that allows you to, I think, perform your best. Anyways, whatever you said next.
I love that mention that you just said about, working with a filmmaker who gives you that freedom of a space where if you mess up, it's fine. We're going to figure it out. We're going to do another take. We're going to go in another direction.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I appreciate that you've mentioned about the way that you work is your relationship with moments of failure. If you're shooting a scene and it's a take that just doesn't quite work, it's just moving on to the next moment. It's not holding on to it. And in all the time that you've been working creatively, has that always been the relationship dynamic that you've had, or is that something that you developed over time?
I have an interesting combination of being an extreme perfectionist, but I can let things go. So in the moment of the scene, I definitely will be like, we'll really, while we're shooting it, I can go into a sort of thinking mode and of perfectionism. But then once it's done, I let it go. And I don't know, I for me, that's been the most healthy and successful way to approach it.
I think that sounds like a really remarkable gift. And thank you so much for talking all about Zola. It truly is just one of those films that, just completely sears itself into your brain. And every single time you watch it, there's new layers and elements within the writing, within the performances to unpack. So, congratulations on everything with that film. And thank you so much, Riley.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and happy holidays.